The rain drummed against the tall windows of Bellmore's restaurant, creating rivers of light from the street lamps outside. Claire Bennett wiped down table 12 for the third time that evening, her movements automatic after 5 years of working the dinner shift. She had learned every corner of this place, every creak in the floorboards, every preference of the regular customers. But there was one regular who remained a mystery. Vincent Harrington arrived at exactly 7:30 every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday evening. He never deviated from his schedule. Claire had watched this pattern for 8 months now, and each time her heart grew heavier with questions she couldn't ask. He was impossible not to notice. Tall and distinguished, with silver threading through his dark hair, Vincent carried himself with the kind of quiet authority that came from years of commanding boardrooms. His suits probably cost more than Claire made in 3 months. Yet despite all the trappings of success, something about him seemed broken. Tonight was no different. Vincent settled into his usual corner table, the one with a view of the entire restaurant, but positioned far enough from other diners to maintain privacy. The hostess, Jennifer, had long ago learned to keep that table reserved for him, even without a call ahead. Some routines were sacred. Claire gathered her notepad and approached his table. She had served him dozens of times, yet he barely looked at her. Not out of rudeness, she had come to understand, but because he barely looked at anything. His eyes were always somewhere else, lost in thoughts that seemed to weigh him down like stones. "Good evening, Mr. Harrington. The usual?" Vincent glanced up briefly, offering a polite nod. "Yes, thank you." His voice was deep and measured, the kind of voice used to being listened to, but there was no warmth in it, no real presence. He was there, but not really there. Claire walked back to the kitchen, her mind churning. Thomas was plating orders at the counter, his chef's hat slightly askew as always. He caught her expression and raised an eyebrow. "Still thinking about the lonely millionaire?" Claire set down her notepad. "Don't you think it's strange, Thomas? He has everything. Money, success, probably a mansion somewhere in the hills. But he eats here alone 3 times a week. No phone calls, no companions, nothing. Just him and an empty chair." Thomas shrugged, focusing on drizzling sauce over a plate. "Some people like being alone. Maybe he's divorced, maybe he's antisocial. Not everyone wants company." "But this isn't someone who wants to be alone," Claire insisted, her voice dropping. "This is someone who is alone. There's a difference." Thomas paused, really looking at her now. "You're getting too invested, Claire. He's just a customer." "Maybe," Claire admitted, "but when you see someone hurting, don't you think someone should care?" She didn't wait for an answer. She picked up Vincent's order once it was ready and carried it back to his table. The restaurant was filling up now, the dinner rush bringing in couples celebrating anniversaries, business associates closing deals, families marking birthdays. Life and laughter filled every table except one. Vincent was staring at his phone, but the screen was dark. He wasn't reading anything, wasn't waiting for a call. He was simply holding it, as if the device itself was some kind of anchor to a world he no longer fully inhabited. Claire set down his meal carefully. Pan-seared salmon, roasted vegetables, no potatoes. He never ate potatoes. "Is there anything else I can get for you?" Vincent looked at the food as if seeing it for the first time. "No, this is fine. Thank you." Claire should have walked away. She had other tables, other customers who actually engaged in conversation, but something kept her feet planted. She watched as Vincent cut into the salmon with precise movements, mechanical and lifeless. He chewed without tasting, swallowed without satisfaction. This wasn't a meal. This was a ritual of survival, nothing more. The evening progressed in its familiar rhythm. Claire served the other tables, laughing at a regular's terrible jokes, helping a child choose from the dessert menu, navigating the controlled chaos that was dinner service. but her attention kept drifting back to table 9, where Vincent sat in his bubble of isolation. Around 9 o'clock, when the dinner rush had settled into a comfortable hum, Claire made a decision. She didn't overthink it, because overthinking would have stopped her. She simply walked to Vincent's table with a fresh pot of coffee and did something she had never done before. She sat down in the empty chair across from him. Vincent looked up, startled. It was the first genuine expression she had seen on his face, actual surprise breaking through the careful mask he wore. "I'm sorry to intrude," Claire said, her heart pounding but her voice steady. "But I've been serving you for 8 months now, and I've never seen you smile. Not once. And I just keep thinking that someone should notice. Someone should care. So I'm noticing." Vincent stared at her, his fork suspended halfway to his mouth. For a long moment he didn't speak. The sounds of the restaurant faded into background noise, leaving just the two of them in a pocket of silence. Finally, he set down his fork. His hands were trembling slightly, Claire noticed. Such a small thing, but it revealed so much. "Why would you care?" Vincent asked, and there was no hostility in the question, only genuine confusion. "You don't know me." "No, I don't," Claire agreed. "But I know what loneliness looks like. I know what it's like to go through the motions while feeling empty inside. And I know that sometimes all it takes is one person to acknowledge that you're hurting for things to feel a little less impossible." Vincent's jaw tightened. He looked away, out the rain-streaked window, and Claire saw him swallow hard. When he looked back, his eyes were glistening. "I used to come here with my wife." His voice was barely above a whisper. "Every week for 15 years. This was our table, our tradition. She passed away 14 months ago. Cancer. And I keep coming back because this is the only place where I still feel close to her, even though the chair is empty, even though she's gone." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with grief that had nowhere to go. Claire felt tears prick her own eyes, but she blinked them back. This wasn't about her emotions. This was about seeing someone who had been invisible for too long. "What was her name?" Claire asked softly. "Margaret." Vincent's lips curved into the ghost of a smile. "She would have liked you. She always said I needed someone to shake me out of my own head. She was the only person who could make me laugh at myself." Claire reached across the table and did something bold. She placed her hand over his. Vincent stiffened at first, then slowly relaxed. Human contact, something so simple, yet he had been without it for so long. "You don't have to carry this alone, Mr. Harrington." "Vincent," he corrected quietly. "My name is Vincent." "Vincent," Claire repeated. "You're allowed to grieve, but you're also allowed to live, and I think Margaret would want you to live, not just exist." They sat there for a few more minutes, not speaking, just being present with each other. When Claire finally stood to return to her duties, Vincent caught her wrist gently. "Thank you," he said, and for the first time since she had known him, his eyes were truly focused on her. "Really, thank you for seeing me." Claire smiled. "That's what we do for each other, isn't it? We see each other, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." As she walked away, Claire felt something shift in the air. It was subtle, like the first crack in a frozen lake when spring begins to thaw, but it was there, and she knew that tonight something important had begun. The following Thursday, Claire arrived at Bellmore's restaurant with a nervous flutter in her chest that she couldn't quite explain. She had replayed their conversation 100 times in her mind, wondering if she had overstepped, if Vincent would return, if he would resent her intrusion into his carefully constructed wall of grief. Thomas noticed her distraction immediately as she tied on her apron in the staff room. "You're fidgeting," he observed, leaning against the locker. "That's never a good sign." "I'm not fidgeting," Claire protested, then realized she was twisting the strings of her apron into knots. She forced her hands to still. "I'm just wondering if he'll come back." "The millionaire?" Thomas shook his head with an amused smile. Claire, guys like that don't change their routines. He'll be here. The question is whether you'll have the courage to talk to him again. It wasn't about courage last time, Claire said quietly. It was about compassion. There's a difference. Thomas studied her for a moment. Then his expression softened. You have a good heart, Claire Bennett. Just be careful. People who are grieving can be unpredictable. Sometimes they push away the very people trying to help them. I know, Claire replied, but at least I tried. The evening shift began with its usual rhythm. The restaurant filled gradually, the soft clink of silverware and murmur of conversation creating a familiar symphony. Claire moved through her tables with practiced efficiency, but her eyes kept drifting to the corner table, still empty as 7:30 approached. Then, precisely on schedule, the front door opened and Vincent walked in. He wore a navy suit tonight, his posture as straight as ever, but something was different. When Jennifer greeted him, he actually smiled. It was small and brief, but it was there. Claire's heart skipped a beat. Vincent made his way to his usual table, and as he sat down, his eyes scanned the restaurant. When they landed on Claire, he didn't look away. Instead, he raised his hand in a subtle wave of acknowledgement. Claire felt warmth spread through her chest. He had come back, and he remembered. She gave him a few minutes to settle before approaching. When she reached his table, notepad in hand, Vincent looked up at her with something that resembled hope. "Good evening, Vincent," she said, using his first name as he had requested. "How are you today?" "Better than I've been in a while," he admitted, and the honesty in his voice surprised them both. "I spent the last 2 days thinking about what you said, about living versus existing. I realized I haven't really been living at all." Claire pulled out the chair across from him. "May I?" "Please," Vincent gestured to the seat. "I was hoping you would." As Claire sat, she noticed details she hadn't seen before. The fine lines around Vincent's eyes spoke of sleepless nights. The slight tremor in his hands revealed anxiety held tightly in check. But there was also a new openness in his expression, as if a door that had been locked for months was finally beginning to creak open. "I haven't talked about Margaret to anyone since the funeral," Vincent began, his fingers tracing the edge of his water glass. "Not to friends, not to colleagues, not even to my sister, who calls every week begging me to open up. But you, a stranger who owed me nothing, you sat down and listened. Do you know how rare that is?" Claire shook her head. "I just did what felt right." "That's exactly why it mattered." Vincent leaned forward slightly. "The world I live in, everything is transactional. People want something from me, my time, my money, my influence. But you didn't want anything except to acknowledge that I was hurting. That kind of genuine kindness is something money can't buy." "Tell me about her," Claire said gently. "About Margaret. What was she like?" Vincent's eyes lit up in a way Claire had never seen. "She was fearless," he began, a genuine smile spreading across his face. "When we met, I was a junior analyst trying to make partner at my firm. I was all business, no life. She was an art teacher at a community center, and she thought my obsession with spreadsheets was hilarious. She used to leave little paintings on my desk, abstract things with wild colors, just to remind me that not everything could be measured in numbers." Claire smiled. "She sounds wonderful." She was. Vincent's voice grew thick with emotion. "She made me better, made me see beyond the bottom line. When I started my company, she insisted we donate 10% of profits to arts education, said we had a responsibility to give back. Every success I've had, she was there celebrating it, keeping me grounded, reminding me why it mattered." The words poured out of him like water from a broken dam. He told Claire about the trips they had taken, the quiet mornings drinking coffee on their balcony, the way Margaret would dance in the kitchen while cooking dinner. He spoke of her battle with cancer, the treatments that stole her strength but never her spirit, the final months when she made him promise not to stop living after she was gone. "I broke that promise," Vincent admitted, his voice cracking. "For 14 months I've been going through the motions, work, home, this restaurant. Repeat. I convinced myself that if I just kept moving, the pain would eventually fade, but it hasn't. It's just gotten quieter, more insidious, like slow poison." Claire reached across the table and took his hand. "Grief isn't something that fades on a schedule, Vincent. It's something you learn to carry.
but you don't have to carry it alone. I don't know how to do this, Vincent confessed, looking at their joined hands. I don't know how to move forward without feeling like I'm leaving her behind. You're not leaving her behind, Claire said firmly. You're honoring her by living the life she wanted for you, by connecting with people, by finding moments of joy, by being present. That's not betrayal, that's love. Vincent closed his eyes, and a single tear rolled down his cheek. He didn't wipe it away, didn't try to hide it. For the first time in over a year, he allowed himself to feel without armor. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the noise of the restaurant fading into background. Other diners glanced their way occasionally, curious about the well-dressed businessman holding hands with his waitress, but Claire didn't care. This moment mattered more than appearances. Eventually, Vincent took a shaky breath and opened his eyes. I should let you get back to work. I'm monopolizing your time. Actually, Claire said with a small smile, my shift ends in 20 minutes, and if you're not in a hurry, I know a coffee shop down the street that stays open late. They have terrible coffee but excellent pie. We could continue this conversation somewhere less formal. Vincent was surprised, then thoughtful. You would want to spend your free time talking to me? I would want to spend my free time getting to know you, Claire corrected. Not Vincent Harrington, the CEO, but Vincent, the person, the man who loved his wife, who needs a friend, who deserves to smile again. Vincent was quiet for a long moment, and Claire worried she had pushed too far, but then he nodded slowly. I would like that very much. 23 minutes later, they walked side by side down the rain-slicked sidewalk toward the small coffee shop Claire had mentioned. Vincent had left his usual generous tip with Thomas, who had given Claire a knowing look as they departed. The coffee shop was nearly empty, just a couple of college students hunched over laptops in the corner. Claire and Vincent claimed a booth near the window, and true to her word, Claire ordered 2 slices of apple pie and 2 coffees that tasted like it had been sitting on the burner for hours. This is terrible, Vincent said after his first sip, but he was smiling. I warned you, Claire laughed, but the pie makes up for it. They talked for 2 hours. Vincent shared stories about building his company from nothing, the risks he had taken, the failures that had taught him more than his successes. Claire told him about her own dreams, how she had always wanted to study social work but couldn't afford university, how she planned to save enough to take night classes eventually. You want to help people, Vincent observed. That doesn't surprise me at all. What else would I do? Claire replied. We're all connected, aren't we? When one person suffers, it diminishes all of us. When one person heals, we all benefit. At least that's what I believe. Vincent studied her with open admiration. You have more wisdom than most people I know with multiple degrees. Margaret would have adored you. Tell me something, Claire said, leaning forward. What would make you happy right now? Not next year, not when you've accomplished some big goal. Right now, in this moment, what would bring you joy? Vincent considered the question seriously. No one had asked him that in so long. Finally, he said, This, sitting here with someone who sees me as a person, not a transaction, talking about things that matter, feeling like maybe, just maybe, I can find my way back to the world. Then that's where we start, Claire said with conviction. One conversation at a time, one moment of connection at a time. You don't have to figure out the rest of your life tonight. You just have to show up for right now. Vincent reached across the table and squeezed her hand. How did you get so wise? Life, Claire replied simply. Loss, watching my own mother struggle after my father left, learning that the only way through pain is straight through it, not around it, and knowing that everyone, no matter how successful they look from the outside, is fighting battles we can't see. They left the coffee shop just before midnight. Vincent insisted on calling a car service to take Claire home, and for once she didn't argue. As they stood on the sidewalk waiting, Vincent turned to her with an expression of profound gratitude. Thank you, Claire, for seeing me, for caring, for giving me hope that I can feel alive again. Claire smiled up at him. Same time next week? Vincent's answering smile was the brightest she had ever seen from him. I'll be there. And maybe we can skip the restaurant and go straight to the terrible coffee. It's a date, Claire said, then blushed. I mean, not date, just a plan, a friend plan. I know what you meant, Vincent said gently. And yes, it's a friend plan. As Claire's car pulled away, she watched Vincent through the rear window. He stood on the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, but his shoulders were straighter than before. The weight he carried seemed—
3 months passed like pages turning in a book neither of them wanted to end. What had started as a simple act of compassion had blossomed into something neither Claire nor Vincent could have anticipated. Their Thursday evening meetings became sacred, a weekly ritual that both of them protected fiercely from the demands of their separate worlds. Claire learned that Vincent had a dry sense of humor that emerged once his walls came down. He learned that Claire sang off-key while doing dishes and had strong opinions about classic literature, despite never having attended college. They discovered shared loves of old movies, rainy afternoons, and the kind of deep conversations that lasted until the coffee shop owner gently reminded them he needed to close. But more importantly, Vincent was changing. The transformation was gradual, like spring melting winter's grip 1 degree at a time. He started accepting lunch invitations from colleagues he had been avoiding. He called his sister back and actually talked instead of offering polite deflections. He even began mentioning Margaret in conversations without his voice breaking, sharing happy memories instead of drowning in grief. On a particularly warm Thursday in April, Claire arrived at their usual coffee shop to find Vincent already there, but he wasn't alone. Beside him sat a woman in her late 30s with kind eyes and an expression of cautious hope. "Claire," Vincent stood as she approached, a nervous energy about him. "I hope you don't mind, but I wanted you to meet my sister, Rachel." Rachel extended her hand with a warm smile. "I've heard so much about you. Vincent talks about your conversations constantly. I had to meet the woman who performed a miracle." Claire shook her hand, feeling slightly overwhelmed. "I didn't perform any miracle. I just listened." "That's exactly the miracle," Rachel said softly. "For over a year, I tried everything to reach my brother. Therapy suggestions, family gatherings, even showing up at his office unannounced. But he kept everyone at arm's length. Then you sat down at his table and somehow you broke through where the rest of us couldn't." Vincent gestured for them to sit. "Rachel wanted to thank you personally. And honestly, I wanted the 2 most important women in my current life to know each other." They spent the evening together, the conversation flowing easily. Rachel shared stories about Vincent as a child, his stubborn determination even then, the way he had always carried the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. Claire saw a fuller picture of the man before her, understanding how deeply Margaret's loss had shaken his entire foundation. As the evening wound down and Rachel excused herself to catch her train home, she hugged Claire tightly. "Take care of him," she whispered. "He needs people like you in his corner." After Rachel left, Vincent and Claire walked through the nearby park, something they had started doing when the weather improved. The cherry blossoms were in full bloom, petals drifting down like pink snow in the lamplight. "Your sister is wonderful," Claire said, linking her arm through Vincent's in a gesture that had become natural between them. "She is," Vincent agreed. "And she's right, you know. You did save me. I was drowning, and I didn't even realize how far under I had gone until you threw me a lifeline." Claire stopped walking, turning to face him. "You saved yourself, Vincent. I just reminded you that you were worth saving. There's a difference." Vincent looked down at her, his expression tender. "These past 3 months have given me something I thought I'd lost forever. Hope, purpose, the feeling that life can still hold joy, even after devastating loss." "Margaret would be happy," Claire said gently, "that you're finding your way back." "I think she would," Vincent smiled. "In fact, I'm certain she would. She always said I needed someone who would challenge me, push me to be better, someone who saw through the exterior to who I really was." They continued walking in comfortable silence until they reached the fountain at the center of the park. Vincent stopped and turned to Claire, his expression serious now. "There's something I need to tell you," he began, his voice slightly nervous. "I've been offered an opportunity. A major investor wants to partner with me on a new venture, something completely different from my current work. It would mean building something from the ground up again, taking risks, really living instead of just maintaining what I've already built." "That sounds amazing," Claire said, though she felt a flutter of anxiety. "What kind of venture?" "A foundation." Vincent's eyes lit up with excitement.
focused on providing arts education and grief counseling services to underserved communities, combining Margaret's passion with what I've learned about the importance of mental health support. It would be challenging, maybe even risky financially, but it feels right. It feels like something that matters. Claire felt tears prick her eyes. Vincent, that's beautiful. Margaret would be so proud. There's more, Vincent continued, taking her hands in his. I want you to be part of it too, not as an employee, but as a partner. Your insight into what people actually need, your genuine compassion, your ability to connect with others, those are exactly the qualities this foundation needs. Claire's breath caught. Me? Vincent, I don't have any experience with running a foundation. I'm a waitress. You're so much more than that, Vincent said firmly. You have emotional intelligence that can't be taught in business school. You understand people in a way that most executives never will. And more than that, you inspire me to be better, to take chances, to believe that meaningful change is possible. Claire's mind raced. This was beyond anything she had imagined. A chance to actually help people on a larger scale, to turn her dreams of social work into reality in a way she never thought possible. But there's something you need to understand, Claire said slowly. I care about you, Vincent, as a friend, as someone I deeply respect, but I need to know this offer is real, not just gratitude or some misplaced sense of obligation. Vincent shook his head. This has nothing to do with obligation. Yes, I'm grateful for what you've done for me, but that's not why I'm asking. I'm asking because I've watched you interact with people for months now. I've seen how you make everyone feel valued, how you notice the details others miss, how you give without expecting anything in return. Those qualities are rare and precious. The foundation needs them. I need them. He paused, his grip on her hands tightening slightly. And if I'm being completely honest, somewhere along the way, my feelings have evolved beyond friendship. I care about you, Claire, deeply, but I understand if you don't feel the same way. I understand if this is too much, too fast. I just needed you to know. Claire's heart hammered in her chest. She had felt the shift, too, the way her pulse quickened when Vincent smiled, the way she looked forward to their meetings with an intensity that went beyond friendship. But she had told herself it was impossible, that they came from different worlds, that she was being foolish. I feel it too, she admitted quietly. I've been trying not to because it seemed crazy. You're this successful businessman and I'm just someone trying to make ends meet. But when I'm with you, none of that matters. You make me feel seen in a way I've never experienced before. Vincent cupped her face gently. You are seen, Claire, completely, and what I see is someone extraordinary, someone who changed my entire life by simply choosing to care when she didn't have to. They stood there in the glow of the park lights, cherry blossoms falling around them like blessings. When Vincent leaned down and kissed her, it felt like the most natural thing in the world, not rushed or desperate, but tender and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, Claire was smiling through tears. So where do we start? With the foundation, I mean. Vincent laughed, pure and joyful. How about we start with you giving notice at the restaurant? Then we'll figure out the rest together, one step at a time. Together, Claire repeated, liking the sound of it. The following weeks were a whirlwind of change. Claire gave her notice at Bellmore's, with Thomas giving her the biggest hug and making sure not to forget the little people when she became successful. Vincent introduced her to his team, and if anyone was surprised by his choice of business partner, they were wise enough not to show it. The foundation took shape slowly but surely. They named it the Margaret Harrington Foundation for Arts and Healing, a tribute to the woman's love that laid the groundwork for everything that followed. Claire threw herself into the work with passion, discovering talents she never knew she had. She connected with community leaders, organized programs, and brought a human touch to every aspect of the Foundation's mission. 6 months after their first real conversation, the Foundation opened its first community center in a neighborhood that had lost its arts programs to budget cuts. The opening ceremony was packed with families, local officials, and supporters. Vincent gave a speech about Margaret's legacy and the importance of healing through creativity and connection. But it was Claire's words that brought tears to many eyes. She spoke about how one moment of genuine human connection had changed 2 lives completely, how caring about a stranger's pain led to something beautiful and transformative,
how sometimes the bravest thing we can do is simply see each other, truly see each other, and choose compassion over indifference. As she spoke, Vincent watched from the side of the stage, his eyes shining with pride and love. This woman who had walked into his darkness with nothing but kindness and courage had not only saved his life, but had helped him build something meaningful from his grief. After the ceremony, as they stood together watching children explore the new art studios, Vincent pulled Claire close. "You know what Margaret used to say?" he murmured. "She said that love isn't just about the grand gestures. It's about showing up day after day, choosing to see the best in someone even when they can't see it for themselves." Claire leaned into him. "She was a wise woman." "She was," Vincent agreed, "and I think she would be happy knowing that her legacy lives on not just in this building, but in what we've built together, a partnership based on mutual respect, genuine care, and the belief that everyone deserves to be seen and valued. I never imagined my life could look like this, that a simple decision to sit down at a lonely man's table would lead here." Vincent kissed her forehead gently. "The best things in life are rarely the ones we plan for. They're the ones we have the courage